In recent years we have been experiencing somewhat of a beat-em-up renaissance period, with games like Streets of Rage 4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge demonstrating just how powerful the genre is right now. In this new golden age of brawlers, another franchise making an impact at present has been the River City Girls. But before we got these games, the River City brand was still chipping away trying to establish a strong presence. The River City franchise has gone down as many paths as the titular city has alleyways, with about as many developers, localizations and titles as you can imagine. Do you want an action-adventure title like the famous entry on the NES? Volleyball Warfare perhaps? How about gameplay set in the Sengoku era of Japan? No matter what way you look at it, Technos Japan offered a number of options for the franchise. With the series starting off as NEKKETSU Renegade Kunio-kun in Japan, or simply Renegade worldwide, the IP has since ballooned into a range of separate genres, even contributing to the birthplace of the iconic Double Dragon franchise. As of 2023, the River City brand rests solely in the hands of Arc System Works, who have had tremendous success both re-releasing the classic titles in the franchise alongside expanding the girlfriends of Kunio-kun and Riki-kun in the titular River City Girls franchise. Before Kyoko and Misako took lead on the series, bringing the franchise to new levels of Western relevance once more, 2013 saw the successful Kickstarter of a new entry in the franchise, bringing the game back to, well, one of its origins. So with all that said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. This is the story of River City Ransom Underground, the last in the series before the boys were switched out for girls. Yeah. 1989 was certainly a memorable year in history whereby we would see many uprisings take place across the globe. With the fall of the Berlin Wall reuniting Germans with one another and the Tiananmen Square protests violently stamping down peaceful assembly in China, change was afoot. In the video game world, things were no different, with Nintendo of America for example feeling their first significant competition, with the release of a Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx-16 in their region. As for Japan, their people seem to want an uprising of their own, or fantasise about being a little more rebellious at the very least. After an era of movies, television and comic books featuring restless youths uprising against authoritarian regimes, Bancho and Sukeban, the male and female leader of the youthful Japanese gangs of delinquents, had become a pop culture mainstay in the country. Sukeban Deka, or the delinquent girl detective, would find herself the star of games from both the Master System and Famicom in 1987 and 1988. Just a sample of the genre, Sukeban Deka features a girl going undercover at various high schools to stop criminal activity, with a dangerous yo-yo weapon in tow. This series seems tame in comparison to Shoujo Commander Izumi, which has a very similar plot, except you can replace the tame yo-yo with a rocket launcher. Yes, a bloody rocket launcher. Who said the Japanese didn't like firearms? Bosozoku, or bike gangs, are another subcategory of Japanese delinquents. If the concept of unruly teenagers riding bikes while fighting the man sounds familiar, you've probably seen one of the defining works of Japanese animation, Akira, a legendary movie and manga series focusing on bike gang members. Technos Japan had explored this genre of story starting with 1986's NEKKETSU Renegade Kunio-kun. In its original Japanese release, the characters were notably stylized as delinquent high school students wearing a traditional school uniform. With high school violence not exactly being a household concept yet in America, the international releases of the home and arcade ports were turned into Renegade and featured redesigned graphics that heavily called back to the 1970s film The Warriors. In Japan, the title character, Kunio-kun, became somewhat of a mascot for Technos, and much like Mario to Nintendo, with him immediately beginning to show up in other genres. While 1987 would have Technos continue the belt action brawler line with Double Dragon, they'd exploit Kunio in NEKKETSU Koko Dodgeball Boo, known in America as Super Dodgeball. As an interesting and fun sports action game, this would just be the first of many diversions for the hero, but he'd soon be craving violence on the mean streets again. Having their cake and eating it too, Technos began developing the franchises codependent on one another, predating how Capcom splintered the Street Fighter franchise into a belt-action brawler in Final Fight, and redefined the one-on-one gameplay with Street Fighter 2. Kunio and his cast would frequently encounter Billy and Jimmy Lee, Abobo and the rest of the cast as the franchise would wax and wane in popularity. 1989 saw the definitive version of Kunio's adventures, which would dominate what the franchise would excel at to this day, with the release of Downtown NEKKETSU Story, better known as River City Ransom in the US, and Street Gangs in PAL territories. The title opened up a number of RPG elements, explorable maps, and non-linear gameplay, which were a revelation for the time. Much like how Symphony of the Night redefined Castlevania, this adventure would redefine the Kunio-kun franchise, even if the English translation took the renegade path and reworked the graphics and setting. Despite the success and praise of this title, the franchise would never truly take root in the Americas, and even in Japan, most of the titles would fall into various sports categories. Various action titles would be released over the years, but English audiences wouldn't get much of them outside of handhelds until the modern port of what would be known as River City Girls Zero, and the collection further timed the two IPs together, Double Dragon and Kunio-kun Retro Brawler Bundle. Still, fandom for that often forgotten NES title wouldn't die down. Between Scott Pilgrim and indie titles like River City Rampage taking inspiration, or even just directly referencing the title, English audiences wanted more of the game. And so did developer Conatus Creative, which launched River City Ransom Underground on Kickstarter on September 9th, 2013, reaching full funding with nearly $218,000 by October the 7th. The Kickstarter set out with the following goals.
We've set out to create a sequel worthy of the name, paying homage to the original while recapturing its charm and gameplay innovation. This is our love letter to River City Ransom, Technos Japan, and the epic fighting and wrestling games of the 80s and 90s. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Nearly 25 years after Alex and Ryan defeated Slick and his gang of students and evil bosses, River City, home to the world's most violent high schools, enjoys a delicate peace. Alex and Ryan run A&R Auto, and the delinquents at River City High School are not up to much, as usual, until disaster strikes.
As you can see, this would be one of the rare times where the US continuity of River City Ransom was referenced, as this game was placed as a direct sequel to that title, and not a Kunio-kun adventure. A producer of the original River City Ransom and director of Renegade, Yoshihisa Kishimoto, was involved in the title as a creative consultant, which is set 2 decades after Alex and Ryan fought Simon and saved Cindy. All plot elements of the original title are based on the Kunio-kun redesigns for the English language audience. With a new kidnapping in River City, the gang known as the Flock are accused as being the perpetrators. But as their leader also went missing, the two sets of delinquents set off to find the truth. While the story doesn't offer anything immediately new, as you're still tracking down a kidnapping victim, nearly 30 years of game developments have expanded the controls past the limitations of the Famicom. Player characters now have dedicated buttons for special moves and item usage, and can even taunt and purchase new moves over the course of their adventure with 3 other players. The game does end up reducing some of the open world aspects of the original, as splitting the game into 3 acts means that some areas are just not available at the beginning. But a day and night cycle allows for a bit more variety, as certain bosses and stores will only be available during certain time windows. A save system replaces the antiquated password system, and if you couldn't tell from the gameplay on the screen, it's all rendered in glorious widescreen. Many of the series' iconic locations make a return to the fold in this one, such as Crosstown High, which has been refurbished into River City High School, Stickville, Flatirons, Oak Hill, and the Forest. Although new areas to explore are introduced too, such as Rollingwood and more. The world is a welcome expansion to what can be found within the NES game. Speaking of the Nintendo Entertainment System, the graphics don't look particularly above and beyond what the NES could pull off, but it has that Shovel Knight vibe where technology advanced, but the art style remained consistent. The release on Steam wouldn't go without hiccups, as the title was removed due to a DMCA request from composer Alex Muir, who filed against the title. The DMCA request followed another takedown that she had filed on Star Maze at DSP. While Conatus kept that they were working within their rights and that the DMCA claim had no legal basis, the developers decided to change the music in question for the speediest resolution. Per Ars Technica's coverage, this was the latest in a string of questionable behaviour, including alleged death threats. In the immortal words of River City Ransom, "Bath, I say." Accompanying the main game is an arena mode, allowing players to duke it out. This would get a bit boring if you were limited to 4 characters that can go through the main adventure from the beginning, so 6 characters can be unlocked for full playthrough of the main game, while enemy characters and bosses can fight for supremacy in the arena. The 10 player characters engage in unique fighting styles in this combo focused fighter, but current players of River City Girls 2 may catch that one of the unlockable characters is Pruvy, keeping her name amongst the Kunio-kun flavoured cast in the recent title. While this may be one of the last adventures before Misako and Kyoko took charge of the franchise, clearly seeds were being planted for Sukeban supremacy. Aside from the playable characters, like in River City of old, a variety of ridiculous gangs are out in force to punish the player, with some of these being more ludicrous than others. Amongst my favourites we can find the nerds who throw chemical vials at players, the rich kids who have used their wealth to learn powerful fighting techniques, and the roids who are, well, taking performance enhancing drugs. These all help add extra character and flavour to the game, and that is without even mentioning the vixens, an all-female gang on roller skates, the warlocks, goth wizards, or simply the generic dudes, fellas wearing beanie hats who complement other gang members who attack when they are least expected to do so. As a cherry on top, in the enemy department, even the legendary Abobo makes an appearance, who hilariously happens to be both the mayor of River City and the principal of the local high school. And here's me thinking it was weird when Boris Johnson was my city's mayor. Upon release, not many media outlets would cover the title, which tends to be a problem when it comes to Kickstarter and retro-inspired titles. The Structoid would give it an 8.5 out of 10, stating,
River City Ransom Underground was worth the wait, and hopefully we don't have to wait nearly 3 decades for the next one. The look, feel, and humor of the original is here with a new in-depth fighting system that feels fresh yet familiar while being deeper than basically every other game in the genre. I can't say for sure that Underground is the best beat 'em up of all time, but it deserves its place at the table with River City Rampage, Golden Axe, Final Fight, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. May the year 19XX live on forever.
Despite the praise the Structoid would drop on the title, the impact of Underground seems to be minimal at best. It did not appear to start a resurgence of interest in the franchise, but only laid as a precursor to what the River City Girls would bring. As of the time of this writing, this is the only title under Conatus Creative belt, and as their Twitter hasn't updated since September 2018, it's likely that they've fallen by the wayside when it comes to producing major multi-platform titles. A look at their GitHub shows that some of the technology they've used in the game has joined the public archive for others to peruse, so not all has gone to waste. Alex and Ryan have since retired from the franchise, and Kunio and Ricky are currently taking back seats to the current leads. If the last 2 titles in the multi-franchise series are any indication, the future is female. Anyway, if you enjoyed this one, why not check out my River City playlist, as I have covered multiple entries from this cult series. Also, make sure you like and subscribe and let me know which of these games is your favourite. Yeah, cheerio.